So Batman's son just created a whole universe and it's amazing. Check this out. So this is the conclusion for DCeased War of the Undead Gods. Just one of the best stories that DC Comics has released in the last like 5 years. It's absolutely phenomenal. So for those of you guys who are catching up with us, at this point at the end, it's now time to go to war with Erebus. Now, we'll make sense of everything that's going on in case you're joining us for the very first time. But again, this is fantastic because with everybody having previously succumbed to the anti-life virus, which is really this story's stand-in for a zombie virus, if we want to call it what it is, that you have all these people that are basically snapping back, right? They're all basically coming back to normal. But here's the kicker. Remember, Erebus is the one behind all of this, which is to say the anti-life virus originated with him. It was Darkseid at the very beginning of the story of DCeased itself, basically tapping into the power of Erebus without really understanding what it was that he was doing. To put this in more practical terms, what Darkseid did is he took a drop of ink and he put it in a glass of water. It just changed everything, right? That's literally what he did. That drop of ink, of course, being the power or the influence of Erebus to basically affect and destroy this whole really the whole universe, to be honest, because everybody across the universe was infected here. But of course, with like Supergirl Kara Zor-El coming back, this is one of the cooler moments, because remember, in the DC story, when she was shot to Earth, she didn't actually go to Earth like she does in the main DC universe. Instead, she went to the realm of the New Gods and was immediately attacked and turned into a zombie. And so that's why here, when she initially comes across Superman, her initial response is, no, there's no way you're Superman. Kal-El is a baby, because up to this point, she never met him, right? Remember, Supergirl comes from Argo City. It was one of the last surviving cities when Krypton was destroyed. But Superman was a baby by the time Krypton died. So of course, given time dilation and aging differences and so on and so forth, that's why he's basically aged up here. So for her, it's coming across someone from Krypton who survived outside of herself, but not the person that she recalls. Now, the bigger takeaway from this, and this is one of the bigger things that goes on here, there's two massive shifts that go on. The first is that Darkseid joins the heroes. Now, one of the reasons why this happens, even though Darkseid won't readily admit it, is because he needs the heroes, right? And in fact, Darkseid's gonna have this amazing moment here in a little while, but like he needs the heroes, right? So it's kind of like there's no way for him to defeat Erebus on his own. But the other thing that goes on here is the Black Racer joins in. Now remember, the Black Racer is one of the many aspects of death that exists in DC Comics. And so having all these heavy hitters on their sides, these are some of the most powerful beings to ever exist in DC Comics. What's so funny is that the solution for everything comes from Damian Wayne, the son of Batman. Now, of course, Bruce Wayne, for those of you guys who are just joining us, he died at the very beginning of DCeased. Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, they're all dead, right? Damian Wayne is the only real surviving member of the immediate Bat family, which is to say, basically like anybody who played the role of Robin. He's the only surviving person, but he ends up meeting with the Black Racer and he says, my father and my brothers taught me to respect all life, but before I was Batman, before I was Robin, I was an assassin. I was raised to look for weaknesses. Now, what he's talking about here for all the new folks is, remember, during Grant Morrison's Batman run, Damian Wayne was initially introduced as basically being the son of Batman that he never knew about, that through some pretty shady stuff, Talia al Ghul gave birth to Damian, and then Damian, being trained by Talia al Ghul and her ilk, was just dropped up on the doorstep of Batman and was like, now he's yours to raise. So Bruce Wayne had to teach Damian that he can't just kill anybody who commits a crime. It was a great story. It's called Batman and Son. It was a great story. Grant Morrison's run on Batman is phenomenal, and we'll probably cover it, right, beyond what we've done already. But it was a great story. The bigger thing here, though, is that when Damian talks about this, he was an assassin. But that's when he says, I've been thinking about how to take the fight to the source. Erebus is a primordial deity. It's the personification of darkness. The only thing that can destroy the dark is light. Erebus is anti-life, and I have an idea. I want you to tell me if it will work. I want you to confirm this, and I can end this being. I'd like your help to do so. And so this is an important distinction to understand. Erebus is about as close as DC Comics gets to what is by all standards of measurement a cosmic entity in Marvel Comics, right? A primordial being, a being that's been around since the beginning of everything in existence and represents a particular concept. But of course, following this, Damian goes to meet with Cyborg, and they have this bit of a conversation, right? Damian Wayne kind of spills the beans to Cyborg in terms of what his plan is, and then they call together all the surviving superheroes and supervillains. Because remember, in this conflict, there are no heroes and villains anymore, right? There's not really like the good guys fighting the bad guys or anything along those lines. It's just the survivors and the dead. And so with this great big huge conversation that goes on, what they realize is that in order to access Erebus, they have to go through what's called a doom tube. The problem with this is the only way to pass through a doom tube is to be dead. And so in order to pull that off, what they're going to do is literally die, right? They're gonna basically have their hearts shut down. And that in the moment when they've passed, they're gonna move through the doom tube and then arrive at Erebus. And to do that, they're gonna bring War World. Now this is cool, right? Because War World, historically speaking in DC Comics, has just quite literally been exactly what it sounds like, a war-torn world. It's ran by Mongol. It's basically a place where you have like endless gladiatorial fights. It's an amazing concept, right? It's a really, really cool concept in DC. Now, of course, Darkseid chimes in and goes as far as to say like, Darkseid will face Erebus, right? Of course, you know, then Guy Gardner chimes in, and Guy Gardner basically gets he gets smacked around a bit for his troubles. The other part of this, though, is they reveal that in order to gain the attention of Erebus, they need forces powerful enough to effectively distract him. And so where Darkseid's on board, they even turn to the god of war, Ares. Now, of course, Ares, ever one of the more interesting characters in DC Comics, and for reasons that I'll never fully understand. Tom Taylor loves this guy. Like, every story he does has the god of war, Ares, in some capacity. He loves this dude, and I don't blame him, right? Under any normal circumstance, Ares is a hoss. Like, this guy is an absolute, he's literally the god of war. Like, he's just one of the coolest characters in DC. But despite all the power that he has, he just tells them point blank, I'm not going in there to fight Erebus. That's a suicide mission. Like, I'm not going in there to do that. I'm just gonna stand back and watch. And that's when Cassie Sandsmark chimes in and calls him a coward, right? She literally calls Ares, the god of war, a coward to his face, right? She was like, there's a battle to be fought, and your plan is to hide from it, right? And where his response is Ares does not hide, the response of Lois, right, stepping in, Lois Lane, right, she steps in, she's like, really? Where were you when my son was standing between this planet and annihilation, right? And even the Black Racers chimes in and says, if you face Erebus tomorrow, old god, you will not be alone. I will be beside you. Death has always followed war. And so it's really kind of cornering Ares, the god of war, and basically making him fulfill his role. So ultimately he ends up joining in, right? It's kind of like, okay, fine, look, I'll do it then, right? Like, I'll go ahead and do this thing. Now, what also complicates things a little bit is that during the time when DCeased was happening, you actually saw alliances and even romances forming where they normally never would have. One of the romances that formed was between Damian Wayne and Cassie, which, if I'm being honest with you guys, I kind of hope this becomes a main DC Universe thing. I don't actually know if that's going on right now. I'm not current with the Robin series and Damian Wayne, so if you know, leave a comment down below and let me know. But I kind of want to see, like, Damian Wayne and Cassie Sandsmark get together, right? Like Wonder Woman, I want to see them, like, get together, because they just make a great couple, because, like, they're both just so headstrong and so independent, and it's just really awesome to see it play out. The problem with this is that Damian actually tries to convince her to stay behind, and saying that, like, what we're going to have here is we're going to have a situation where all these Kryptonians that had previously been confined to the bottled city of Kandor, right, have now been freed as a result of DCeased. They need to be trained, they need to be taught how to fight, all that kind of stuff. They need you to organize and structure them and teach them battle formations. He's kind of trying to keep her there. He's kind of trying to keep her away from the main conflict as a whole. Not in so many words. I mean, she even goes as far as to say, if you're trying to spare me from what's going on, he says, spare you, you're Wonder Woman. I'm asking the greatest warrior I know to protect the entire universe. And her response is, really, what's the weapon, Damian? This thing you and Cyborg have come up with. And where he won't tell her, she says, and conveniently, I won't be with you to see it. And that's where he kind of plays this role. And he was like, do you really believe that I don't want you beside me? I really, really do. But you need to be here to basically teach people how to fight. The superhero numbers have been drastically reduced, so on and so forth. He's trying to keep her there. Now, he's doing it out of love, and he's doing it out of concern. But again, Cassie's one of the most amazing female characters in DC. She's pissed because she wants to fight. She wants to be there in this battle and be a part of it. She doesn't want to be kept. And so it's one of the coolest things about her character. I love the role that Cassie Sandsmark plays here. And Tom Taylor does a great job writing her, right? Then, of course, you get this really, really cool moment, right? Because again, this is all kind of leading up to this big thing. You have this cool moment where Jonathan Kent meets with Damian, only for us to find out that it's Damian's birthday. And so where Jonathan says, if you're really going to go through with this plan with like the whole life force and all that kind of stuff, and you're leading the charge, then you need to represent represent life, right? So what he does is he gives him a new Batman suit that is totally draped in white, and it looks dope. Like, we'll see what it looks like when he's wearing it, because he looks amazing in an all-white bat suit. Oh my God. Right, now here's the funny thing. Tom Taylor's not pulling this out of nowhere. Jeff Johns did this during his Green Lantern run. There was a point where Batman became the White Lantern, which is basically like, initially it started with Kyle Rayner, and Kyle Rayner became Space Jesus. But like, being a White Lantern is what happens when you master all the other Lantern rings, and then just kind of usher yourself into a higher level of power. Now for Damian, he hasn't achieved that level of power. It's really more just a ceremonial garb, if we're being honest with ourselves, right? That's really more what this represents. But he's kind of wearing this outfit as a representation of the life force itself. So like the good versus the evil, light versus dark, that kind of thing. And so once they're all basically kind of tied into Warworld, and then they in turn shut down all their hearts and enter through the Doom Tube and into the realm of Erebus, we get what is quite likely one of the most amazing depictions of a character in the history of DC Comics. I love the way this guy looks, right? I just love the way this guy appears. He looks absolutely awesome. And so when you have Ares and you have the Black Racer who appear before Erebus, he pays attention to them, right? And he says, Ares and the Black Racer, such little things. When there is no one left to fight a war, when there's nothing living to die, there will still be darkness. I gotta say, man, it's one of the most intimidating statements that I think I've seen like a godlike primordial being make in comics. It's dope. And so they immediately go on the attack. Now, what's funny about this is Tom Taylor kind of leans into the idea that they're basically ants throwing little sticks at a human being, that it doesn't make any difference at all, right? Like Oliver Queen's got like the arrow of Apollo along with a bow, right? You have like the heroes who are launching an attack against Erebus, but they're literally tearing him open, right? Like cutting a hole in him. But that's kind of the benefit. While Tom Taylor leans into it and almost makes it appear a little comedic, right? In the sense that it's like, what are they really going to do against this guy? That's the overall point. The fact that he wouldn't pay any attention to them because he considers them so insignificant, that's their weapon. That's their benefit. Because cutting him open and then forcing Warworld inside, that's when everything changes. Because what happens here is that Cyborg, tapping into his own memories, right? Like accessing his own systems to ensure the plan goes through, realizes the life force is no longer in him again. Remember, the life force was instilled inside Cyborg, which is how they were able to synthesize a cure for the anti-life virus in the first place and make everybody normal again. But what Damian Wayne realized is that at some point in the past, that Bruce Wayne, his father, he says he was a paranoid man, and you were bonded to apocalyptic technology, right? Bruce didn't just hide a tracker in Cyborg, he hacked Cyborg's entire system years ago and left control with Damian. And so Damian says, I had a theory. The anti-life virus leapt out of your mind. I need the opposite, and I found it in you. I found the life equation. I extracted it and I erased it from all of your system. Now it only exists in me. This is a sacrifice. It's what Damian Wayne is doing. He's literally taken the life equation from Cyborg, imbued it with himself with the intention of entering into Erebus through Warworld, and then in turn detonating and wiping out Erebus, but at the same time, basically creating a whole new universe in the process. It's amazing. Like, it's one of the most crazy things to happen with Damian. And so where Cyborg realizes there's no way to stop him, and Damian basically teleports out before Cyborg can do anything, in turn, Cyborg joins the rest of the forces. And when they ask him, where's Damian at? His response is, Damian isn't coming. Now, initially, Darkseid believes that, like, the weapon failed. And if it did, they've got minutes to get out of this entire realm of Erebus before they're either destroyed by him or converted into dead beings as a result of just being in his realm. But the response here of Cyborg is, no, the weapon did not falter. The weapon is Damian. He's taken the life equation into himself. He intends to travel there and then basically destroy Erebus in the process. And so Damian does have a few kind of momentary goodbyes, specifically talking to Oliver Queen. Not the most important thing, but it is a bit of a cool moment here because in turn, Ares, the god of war, is seemingly destroyed. And then when Damian teleports inside of Erebus, Erebus starts talking to him, right? He refers to him as mortal, and then he says, like, Erebus, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. And Erebus responds, this will destroy you too. And the response of Damian is, not really, I'll just become something else. And so where Erebus says, I'm willing to bargain, the response of Damian is, for your existence? No. You took my father, you took my brothers, you hurt my friends, and you took so much from our world, from our universe. And when Erebus asks, what do you want from me? The response of Damian is the most Damian Wayne response ever. He says, nothing. You pissed me off. There will be no bargain. This will just be your end. And it's the most Damian Wayne thing ever. Now, here's what's so cool about this, right? The sacrifice of Damian Wayne here only really has significance to you if you're familiar with the history of his character in DC. If you're not really familiar with the history and the story of Damian, to a degree it's kind of lost on you. But Damian, in a lot of ways, just killed. He was death incarnate. He would kill indiscriminately. In fact, one of the first stories where he appeared, he killed a guy who was a thief. He cut his head off because any and all crimes need to be paid for with death, right? A person has to die for any crime that they commit. So to be a person raised with such an extreme view, right? Such a black and white and binary view of life and death, crime and punishment, coming to a person or becoming a person that's willing to sacrifice their life to save a universe is a complete and total 180 for his character. And so what makes this really cool is Jonathan Kent steps in. Right now, this story, we can largely kind of assume the history between Jonathan and Damian is very much the same, even during their younger years, right? The Super Sons, the teenage superhero team, or at least the young kid superhero team, which, by the way, if you never read Super Sons, one of the most fun stories ever in the history of DC Comics. It was amazing. It was so fun. It was a blast. But what they realize is there's no way for them to extract Damian alive. It's not going to happen. In order for Erebus to die, Damian has to die as well. So Jonathan chooses to stay behind. Now his father won't let him, right? Like Superman does not want Jonathan to stay there. But the response of Alfred as the Spectre is, I will get him out, Clark, right? I will extract Jonathan in time for him to survive the destruction of this universe. But it's just this amazing moment where literally Alfred and Jonathan and Damian are just sitting together. The three of them are just together and just talking. And it's an incredibly beautiful moment because Jonathan and Damian are best friends, and that Damian is the last son that Alfred really has, right? Like, he viewed Batman as a son, he viewed Damian as a son or potentially a grandson, but he was basically family. And so with the death of Damian, Alfred will officially lose the last remaining member of his family, but they have to let him do it. They have to let him make this sacrifice. It's so beautiful the way it was done, because Damian says, if I told you what I was doing, you never would have let me go through with it. And the response of Jonathan is, no, I wouldn't. I was right. You were a great Batman. And the response of Damian is, thank you, John, and then he explodes, right? He detonates. And so when Erebus is basically killed in this massive explosion, Alfred gets Jonathan out of there. They get through a portal, right? They get back to the real world itself. And then in turn, Alfred has this kind of inner monologue where he says, I visit sometimes the cosmos Damian made. I glide past its new suns and I walk over its cooling planets. I had no idea how much a parent would sacrifice for a child. Not until I had my own did I understand what I would give up for them, what I would do if any harm came to them, how deeply I could miss them, my bats, my sons, my whole universe. It is this just beautiful ending to what is one of the darkest stories that DC did, but I loved it. Oh my God. So this is the end of DCeased, guys. This is the conclusion of the story, and I think it's probably one of the greatest stories DC's done. I wouldn't even say the last 5 years, I'd say the last 10 years. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.